Well, I'm going to hand it next to Sammy Shelor. Sammy's a very special guy to me. I've known him for many years. He used to be in a band called the Virginia Squires, and then he, I remember 20 years ago plus, oh no, excuse me, well, yeah, 20 years ago plus, he said, I just got the Lonesome River Band. And he says, man, they've got good vocals, and I love being in a band with good vocals. And Sammy's not been, he's written instrumentals, but he's not known as an instrumental player. He's known as a great band leader that has a band that has a whopping killer banjo sound on everything. And he won the Steve Martin Prize for Excellence in Banjo and Bluegrass this past year. Very well deserved. Earl Scruggs was among the people you decided made that decision. So it must have been okay. You were okay by Earl. What's your you know, where does Earl fit into your development as a banjo player?
Well, my first memories were seeing the Martha White show on TV when I was very young. You know, 3 to 4 years old. I can remember seeing. My mom said I would watch commercials and I'd watch the Flat Spread show, but nothing else. And my grandfather played banjo and kind of played a cross between Charlie Poole style and Earl Scruggs. He kind of evolved more into the Scruggs style later in his life, but so having that influence and having the influence of Earl and also seeing Flat and Scruggs when I was 5 years old.
And you should mention where you grew up.
Yeah, I grew up in a little place called Meadows of Dan, Virginia. It's 60 miles southwest of Roanoke. And for anybody that is familiar with Galax, Virginia, where the big Fiddler's Convention and stuff is, it's about 35 miles east of Galax, right on the Blue Ridge Parkway. And so started going to the Galax Fiddler's Convention when I was 4, and meeting old-time musicians and bluegrass musicians. And then my grandfather being a player, he built me a little banjo out of it was a combination of pieces of a pressure cooker, a wood rim. It had bolts from the Tractor Supply Company that went around, and they used clothes hanger wire to make brackets. And it had a tin head on it. He whittled out a scaled neck, and that's what I learned to play the first 4 or 5 songs.
I bet Frank would love to get his hands on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very playable banjo. I still have it. It's only about this long, but he figured out the scale and made it work, you know. And my other grandfather loved the music, but didn't play and loved to travel. So he told me if I learned to play 2 songs, he'd buy me a full-size banjo. So I learned to play Cripple Creek and Old Joe Clark, and I went running across the field to his house. Played him those 2 songs, and I dragged the banjo back across the field and got it back to the house, and that's when I started learning how to play.
That's a great story. I love that. It does not fit with how I learned, by the way.
We'll talk about that in a minute.
We'll talk about that in a minute. So, why don't you give us an example of what you like to play in a situation like this?
Well, I grew up, like I say, around as much old-time music as I did bluegrass. And there was a great player from a little place just southwest of me called Round Peak. His name was Fred Cochran. And Fred Cochran and Tommy Gerald were like the old-time gurus of our part of the country. Back in the 60s, you could ride by their house at any given time in the summer, and they'd be sitting on the front porch playing, and they were, as my grandpa said, the hippies would be in the yard hanging out listening, you know. And but they just, people came from all over the country to hear these guys play and learn from them. And I was fortunate enough at an early age to get to sit at Fred Cochran's knee and watch him play, you know. And he did everything with downstrokes, clawhammer style, but he had a forward roll to his playing. And so my grandfather wouldn't let me play clawhammer. He wanted me to learn 3 fingers, so I had to kind of adapt what I could see Fred doing to what I did. And I'll do you a tune. This is kind of a version of Cumberland Gap that I learned from listening to him. And it's a 3-part song, which Earl always did it as a 2-part and had different changes to it. But this is kind of the old-time version, the Round Peak version of Cumberland Gap.
Now, so you're playing open C.
Double C tuning.
Double C tuning.
Yeah.
There's a low C on the fourth string, and then you raise the B to a C, and then the first string gets raised, and there you are. Boy, that sounds good. And this reminds me, you know, there's such a groove in your playing, and everybody who listens to the Lonesome River Band, and there's a lot of them, always notices there is this groove. And I wonder if you, did you play for dances a fair amount when you were young? Because dancing was a big thing in that part of the country for acoustic music.
Yeah, that, I mean, every weekend there was either a fiddler's convention, mostly during the summer, and that's where it was contests, but it was also the learning grounds. I mean, you just walk from campsite to campsite, and everybody there were pickers. And my goal my whole life was to get around people who were better than me and learn from them. And I started playing in bands when I was 10 years old and was playing in adult bands. And as I grew through my teenage years, I was just, when I was about 10 years old, I decided, I'd been playing about 5 years at that point, I decided it was really what I wanted to do. I saw the Osmond Brothers, Flatt and Scruggs, J.D. Crowe and the New South, Monroe's band, all these bands that came near the house, and I watched them play, and I decided when I was about 10 that that's really what I wanted to do. So I would get home from school at 3 o'clock, and my mom would make me go to bed at 11, and I would sit there and literally play banjo for 8 hours a day. And you know, I'm kind of tall, but I wasn't that tall when I was growing up, so everybody always asked me if I played basketball. I might take a 30-minute break and go out on the street and play ball during the day, but the rest of the time I was sitting there with a banjo in my hand. And just, that was my learning time. And then I went on the road when I was 14, started playing Southern gospel music, and played with the Easter Brothers and several local bands around there. The Easter Brothers was the biggest gospel group I played with, who, those guys are vocally my heroes in life. Alan Mills always said when they hit a note together, the three of them, it sounded like a siren because it was so tight. And then started playing bluegrass. I went from Southern gospel to playing bars, and the truth hurts, you know. And I got into bluegrass bands, and back in the late 70s, early 80s, and Pete can attest to this, we made our living in the wintertime playing bars. I mean, there was a lot of clubs and stuff that featured acoustic music back in those days, and a lot more so than now. And we did a lot of that. And then I worked my way into the festival scene in the early 80s, and just been doing it ever since.
And I remember in the early days when you were in the Lonesome River Band spent part of its time as a bar band with you on Telecaster.
Yeah, in the early 90s, we added a drummer, and to get through the winters, we were only playing about 50 bluegrass days a year, so we would play 6 nights a week in dance halls and clubs, and it would wear you out. You played, you know, basically 4 straight hours a night, 6 nights a week, and you might come home with $400 for the week. You know, and you were going from home all of that.
100 banjos.
Oh yeah.
What did you do with that? And you weren't thinking when you were 14, since you wanted to do this for life, that what you're going to end up doing at your current age of about 50, which is working on the bus, booking gigs.
Scars, that's from Tuesday's repairs. And I became a band leader by default through the years. I joined the Lonesome River Band 22 years ago. And the last original member left in 1995. Myself and one other person bought him out, bought the name. Ronnie Bowman was my partner at that time, and then he left the band in 2001. And I had a decision to make. I loved the music we were playing and wanted to continue. And it was either buy the band, find guys that could play and sing the music, because I'm not a singer, and keep it going, or just let it die. And that's what I've tried to do, is keep it going. So I've been been an owner and band leader for 11 years now.
And you were on the David Letterman show just last November, and sounded mighty good, especially that new guy playing harmony banjo with you. What's his name again? Steve Martin.
Steve Martin, yeah, that's him.
You and him sounded good.
He was playing my part, and I learned the harmony.
Yeah, well, all right. You can do it, though. Mighty good. One more tune out of you, would you, Sammy?
Oh, let's see. Since I'm in that tune. And when I'm sitting around the house, this is the tune that I stay in. I just love the tune, the tone of it, and it's just a fun tune to play around with. And you know, there's probably, I know maybe 3 tunings on a banjo, and there's probably 100 different ones you can do. And it's good to experiment with that stuff and try different things. But this is the one I kind of end up doing. But this is an old tune I learned when I was a kid from some of my family were on the original Bristol sessions in 1927 when Ralph Peer came to Bristol and recorded country music for the first time. It was Jimmy Rogers and the Carter family. And there was a group on there called Joe Blackard and the Moonshiners. And Joe Blackard was my great-grandmother's brother. And he was a fiddle player. And so they did a few tracks on that original recording, and this is a tune I learned from his daughter Clarice, who was a piano player and played fiddle tunes on the piano. And I used to go to their house when she was in her 80s and I was 10, 11 years old, and she taught me this tune. It's called Mississippi Sawyer.
If anyone wants the video, I've got it.